Well, we welcome it because the GSD all along has been saying that Victoria Stadium is the best site for a national football stadium. I think it's a monumental U-turn, I have to say, by the government. Because for the last 4 years, the government have been saying that Victoria Stadium is not the right location because it just simply couldn't be done in Victoria Stadium. Because of the space constraints, you could not build a national stadium at that particular site. And it shows that all along the government was misleading people because it could be done and we said that it could be done. Now, having said all that, if we can, for £16 million that the government is getting back, then build facilities for rugby, build facilities for cricket, and build facilities for athletics as well as all the other sports, then obviously it's going to be good for sport in the long run. And at the end of the day, what I'm interested in is in us getting it right for the sake of sport. I think that 2019 is an ambitious timetable, but I hope that the government succeeds in basically completing the project by then. We will obviously monitor this very, very carefully because from our point of view, we've got to make sure that there is a fair deal, not only for football, but there is a fair deal for sports in general. And in football as well, part of the problem is not the national stadium, but the training facilities and the lack of training facilities. That's why our footballers and our clubs have got to go to Spain. That's got to be dealt with. We would have dealt with it within our own plans for the development of Victoria Stadium into a sports village. So we will monitor the situation very carefully so that we ensure that everybody across the sport in Gibraltar gets a fair deal.
Isn't the difference the funding? The GSD's plan would presumably have been taxpayer funded, while this administration has secured funding from UEFA and FIFA.
Yes, we would have funded it by way of the sale of land. We would have moved, for example, Bayside School into the Rook area, and therefore that would have released land in order to expand the Victoria Stadium and provide extra facilities as well as the football pitch, which would have been multi-purpose use. It would have been for the entirety of sport. But don't lose sight of the fact that when we proposed our plans, we were told from the very beginning it was misconceived because it simply couldn't be done, that there wasn't enough space to build a national stadium at that particular site. So this is a monumental U-turn by the government. And the government really needs to explain why they misled the people of Gibraltar for 4 years in relation to this, when all along it could be done. And remember one thing, that for the last 4 years, we have had our football supporters having to travel to El Faro in order to watch the GFA national games. Well, look, if the government had from the very beginning not pursued Europa Point, which was misconceived and was wrong for Gibraltar, and then not replace that with the other site at Lathbury Barracks, which again was never going to be suitable for a national stadium, as we maintained throughout that time, we could have built something there, even on the government plans, and we would have had people not having to travel for that time. We've wasted an awful lot of time because the government really has not dealt with this particular issue appropriately from the very beginning.
You say you've welcomed this, so a cause for celebration rather than for saying I told you so?
Now look, in a situation where the press hardly questions the government, and the government has very successfully got a ring of steel, which includes reticent on the part of the press to ask these types of questions, which I would have expected. I mean, you look at the general election in the UK now, the first thing that they asked Prime Minister May is, well, but you said a year ago that you were going to go full term. Now you're changing your tune. Well, I would have expected somebody to say to the government, well, how can you now go for Victoria Stadium when you spent 4 years saying that it was not possible because it was limited in space? That's our job, to basically hold the government to account. I've also been generous in saying to you that at the end of the day, parking those issues, which go to the judgment of the government and the way the government has handled this, that I hope it works, and I hope that by 2019, that we do cater for all our sport in Gibraltar, because it's not only about football, it's also about cricket, it's also about rugby, about athletics and all the other sports that we want to enjoy.
Is that the major issue that you'll be scrutinising going forward?
Absolutely, and I think that all those sportsmen and women from all those different sports would want us as an opposition to scrutinise the government. It's by scrutinising, it's by holding the government to account that we make sure that the government does as good a job as possible and that the government keeps its promises. The government says that it can build all these things for £16 million. I hope so, but it's our job to scrutinise the government.